If you're visiting Tipperary Studies to dig into family history, local sports, old scandals, or just see what life was like 100 years ago, well, you've come to the right place. Because when it comes to finding the real, everyday story of Tipperary, nothing beats its newspapers. Probably more people use our newspapers than any other material we have. Think about it. Where else will you read about that thrilling match in Nina in 1957? Who scored, who got injured, and whether the team came home with a pint or a prize? When was the foundation stone laid for your parish church? Was your great-grandmother's wedding announced in the paper? Did your great-uncle get into trouble or fame after that messy argument at the fair? And that photo you found in an old edition, the one where you thought you looked so stylish in 1972. Looking back, perhaps not so much. These aren't just headlines. Newspapers are the best running record we have of our towns, villages, parishes, and the whole county. They go back nearly 2 centuries, printed on paper that's now fragile, yellowed, and full of history. Before Tipperary Studies existed, old newspapers were kept where they were printed, often in shops, libraries, or even someone's attic. And sadly, back in the day, people would sometimes cut out the article they wanted, maybe their wedding notice or a story about their cousin. No thought for the next person who might want to read it. Thanks to modern copying technology, that kind of vandalism is a thing of the past. We aim to collect every newspaper published in Tipperary, and we're getting close. Today, Tipperary is covered by 3 big weekly papers: the nationalist Clonmel, covering the south, the Tipperary Star, Thurles, covering the centre, and the Nina Guardian, Nina obviously, covering the north. But here's the secret: don't just check one. In the early 1900s, for example, the Tipperary Star often covered the south better than the nationalist did. And if you're researching a small village, you might find your ancestor mentioned in a paper from a neighbouring town. We keep these papers in bound volumes, each year neatly stitched together. For recent decades, you can read the actual paper or view it online. For the older papers, before the 1980s, say, you'll find them on microfilm. One spool holds a whole year's worth of news. Easy to use, easy to copy. Many papers back then didn't just come out on weekends. They had midweek editions. So if your ancestor was mentioned on a Wednesday, you won't miss them. More than just 3 papers, then, a newspaper explosion in the 19th century. Tipperary, that's the county, used to have dozens of newspapers. In the late 1800s, the small town of Cashel had 2 rival papers, the Cashel Gazette and the Cashel Sentinel. Why? Because 2 ambitious editors wanted to be heard. At its peak, Tipperary had more than 20 local newspapers, each with its own voice, its own politics, and its own readers. Here's a quick taste of the papers we hold. From Clonmel, the Advertiser, Chronicle, Constitution, Free Press, Herald, Independent, Nationalist, of course, People, Tribune. From Thurles, the Leader, Star, Cashel, Gazette and Sentinel. From Tipperary Town, the People, and then that became the Tipperary Man. From Nina, the Advocate, the Guardian, the News, the Vindicator. Some of those papers only lasted a few years, others ran for over a century. Why read these papers? You might think if only 500 or so copies were printed, how many people really read them? A lot more than you might think. Newspapers were shared in pubs, in reading rooms, schools, homes. One copy might be passed around 10, 20, 30 people. And because they came out once a week, they sat on tables for days, read, reread, debated. They weren't just news, they were community chat. Back then, politicians didn't have TV or social media, so they held public meetings. And if you couldn't be there, well, you read about it in the paper. And if you could be there, the odds were that you couldn't hear the speeches, and so you still read about it in the newspaper. If you're looking for local opinion on Home Rule or how the local priest reacted to a new law, the newspaper is your best bet. What about the really old newspapers? Some early papers, that's pre-1850, don't look like today's newspapers. They may seem dull because they borrowed stories from national or British papers, but they always reported local crime, especially the twice-yearly assize, which would be the local court session. So if your ancestor was accused of stealing a pig or brawling at the fair, that's where you'll probably find them. Later papers are full of hatches, matches and dispatches, births, marriages and deaths. You'll also see advertisements that tell us about wages, local industry and even the price of a concert ticket. Don't forget, some newspapers from outside Tipperary also covered the county. Finn's Leinster Journal, which was from Kilkenny, Freeman's Journal, which was Dublin, or the Cork Examiner, all covered Tipperary. All of the papers I've mentioned are available free, online, or in fact here at Tipperary Studies. One warning: the print on old newspapers can be faint, smudgy, or uneven. Sometimes it looks like the printer was in a hurry, or sometimes the printing press wasn't very good. But with a little patience and our helpful staff, you'll get through it and find what you're looking for. Now, of course, newspapers had opinions. They weren't neutral. They were owned by people with strong views. The Tipperary Advocate was run by Peter Gill. He was a champion of tenant farmers. The Clonmel Chronicle, well, that was Protestant and Unionist, and read by the county's elite. The Tipperary Free Press was Catholic and nationalist, and read by more ordinary people. And its circulation was double that of the Chronicle. Even the Nenagh Guardian changed over time, from being firmly establishment in the 1840s to being more republican by the 1920s. Running a paper, then, could be dangerous. The Cashel Sentinel, edited by Tom Walsh, was so outspoken that he was jailed more than once. And during the Civil War, when Republicans took over Clonmel, they didn't just censor the nationalist, they sometimes forced the editor to leave blank spaces or even miss an issue. No news then, just silence, and those pages can still be seen. Even older papers had quirks, like handwritten numbers on ads. Why? Because from 1763 to 1855, the government taxed newspapers. Every ad had to be numbered and taxed. A clever way to control the press. What can you find? Real stories, real lives. Here's a page from the Clonmel Nationalist, April 17th, 1912. It's full of hope. The third Home Rule Bill was being passed. People believed it would change everything. We know, of course, that it didn't. They were excited about peat bogs turning into jobs, about honey production, about the glove factory in Tipperary town, and then a small notice. John Doohy, grocer's assistant, died suddenly at the age of 24. We can guess the cause: consumption, TB. Here in the paper you feel his loss, his name, his job, his age, his family. And look at the ads. A job paying 15 shillings a week. Now that's about €140 today. Buy a ticket to see Percy French. Yes, the Percy French, the Mountains of Mourne. And that cost nearly a whole week's wages. Presentation Convent in Cashel. They were now making hurley and football jerseys. The nuns stitching away, with a little blessing, I suppose, tucked into the seams. All of this matters for you, for the county. Whether you're tracing your family tree, writing a school project, researching local sports history, or just curious what life was like before mobile phones, you will inevitably end up with newspapers in your hands. You'll see how wrong they were about the future. You'll laugh at the fashions, you'll cry at the obituaries, you'll feel the pride, the fear, the hope of people who lived here, just like you. So come in, take a seat and start turning the pages of Tipperary's past. We have guides, we have databases and staff always ready to help. Try our free online resources and use our microfilm readers. And if you're ever stuck, just ask.